Good morning, friends. Grab your cup of coffee. We're going to talk about childless cat ladies. JD Vance made a comment about childless cat ladies during the last campaign, and people freaked out about it. But this is actually a legitimate problem, and it's something we really do need to start talking about because sooner rather than later, we're going to run up against not only a fiscal cliff, but an economic transition and a demographic decline that happening all at once is going to be really impactful in our society. And, I talk about things from the perspective of AI taking jobs and the white collar workforce receding and people losing jobs en masse. And this is going to directly impact people who are expecting to rely on the government as the social safety net of the future. Things may change, right? We may enter into a world where there's UBI and everything's great and wonderful, but I wouldn't bank on that. We haven't had public conversations about that. No one's debating it. We are, I think, within 18 to 24 months away from massive job losses, and no one is even talking about it. So I don't think whatever safety net that needs to be in place before this happens is actually going to be put into place. So we're going to have a period, I think, and definitely in the 2030s, probably into the 2040s and beyond, where the social safety net, so Medicare, food stamps, Social Security, all these things people are expecting to be able to leverage in retirement, they're not going to be there. So this begs an obvious question. If you are someone who bought into the feminist narrative and you prioritized career over family, and for one reason or another, your career hasn't really panned out financially, maybe for some women it has, but I think for a lot of women it hasn't, and you're kind of getting into middle life, you're maybe an elder millennial or a young Gen Xer, and you're looking towards your retirement and you have no family, your savings are maybe there, but maybe not enough to take you forward into retirement. And then, of course, once you get into retirement, there's only so many cute little umbrella drinks that you can drink before you go insane. There's spiritual questions and emotional questions about, okay, what happens when all your friends die and you have no family and you're left all alone? So I think there's some real questions we need to start asking about what the future is going to look like for childless cat ladies, because the assumption is they're going to subsist on the society as it currently exists and the culture and the norms and the financial institutions, especially from the government and the social safety net, that one, I don't think is going to exist for much longer, and two, I don't know if childless cat ladies honestly deserve to benefit from these things. If they're not contributing to the future, why should they be the ones to draw benefits from those working in the future? So this is a heated topic for a lot of people, so let's dive in. First, I want to talk about the aspect of social value. So feminism ascribes social value to having a career, having a job, your economic value in society. And you can see this all around. Talk to any women. I personally experience this, and I think you can just look around and see it. How many reality TV shows or Hollywood movies are out there venerating mothers or traditional values? None. You have the Kardashian clan, and that's what we're supposed to look up towards, and they're the pinnacle of girl bosses. You had the piece that was written about Hannah Neeleman and her family at Ballerina Farm last summer, and that blew up because it cast her as being an oppressed woman who had to give up her career and her dreams in order to pump out 8 children. All she does is she's a slave in her kitchen, taking care of her family. And so just look at the cultural conversation and compare the Kardashians to the Neelemans, right? You have 2 examples of 2 families who leveraging media, building their own businesses, their own companies, doing their own things. One we talk about in a good frame of reference. The other we don't. The other we look down upon. And this extrapolates into broader culture and society. So feminists told women like me, they told women, all sorts of women, that that being a good woman is having a career, it's earning your own keep, and it's working for a large corporation outside the home, so working in a 9-to-5 job. And so a good ambitious woman was one who climbed the corporate ladder alongside her male peers. And again, you see this with feminism. It's all about competition. It's all about trying to reach and become equal to men. It's not about celebrating women for being women, because if it were the case, you would be treating the Kardashians and the Neelamans exactly the same, and that clearly is not happening. So for myself, I got to a point probably towards the end of high school. I grew up in an evangelical church. I was surrounded by stay-at-home moms, homeschooling moms, mom bloggers, moms who ran businesses. Some worked. My mom worked, but a lot of moms who prioritized family and children and their role as the mother and the wife and their homes. And I rebelled against that. I hated it. I rejected it. And so I learned to fear motherhood, and I think it came from culture. I remember sitting in high school. I think we were in AP English class in the first period, and we had all started getting our college, stuff back where we had been accepted to college. And I remember there was a girl in my class who got accepted to Princeton. She got accepted to Cornell, but she ended up going to BYU. She's Mormon, so kind of par for the course. But she ended up going to BYU, and now she's obviously married, has kids, and she's a co-founder in I think a book company and a couple other ventures out there, which, Mormons, unsurprisingly that the Neelamans would have ballerina farm, like Mormons are well known for having large families and running businesses. But I always thought to myself, I was like, she's throwing her potential away. She got into Princeton. Why wouldn't she go to Princeton? And obviously, that's just an anecdote, but at the time, I thought college and career was everything. And then that shaped how I saw relationships. And it's one of the reasons why in college, I didn't really date and I didn't prioritize dating, because I was so focused on my career. And then later on in my 20s, I started to see, I looked at some of the other women around me, and I started to see motherhood and having children as a punishment, And this is the narrative that feminists tell us. It's, you're going to have your career taken from you. If you have to step away from your career, you're going to miss out on key promotions and all this stuff. You're going to lose your career. You're not going to be able to grow. And so motherhood was stigmatized, and mothers, even to this day, are seen as separate and unequal from career women. They are less than. They are second-class citizens within woman culture. No one talks about mothers and the work mothers do and the value they provide to society in the same light that they talk about girl bosses and career. And you just have to look in the media. Look at who is celebrities. Look at, the Time 100 lists and Forbes self-made women lists and, TV shows and podcasts and news articles, and look at the macro narrative. It's, there might be one-off pieces here, one-off pieces there, highlighting women in a good light and mothers in a good light. But in the macro, the vast majority of these articles are highlighting the feminist narrative. And they're talking about how great it is for women like the Kardashians to be girl bosses and the Jenners to be girl bosses. They're not talking about how great it is that Hannah Neeleman has built a business that she gets to run with her husband from their farm out in Utah, and she gets to make her family homemade lunch every single day. Like, that's incredible. Who wouldn't want that? Why are we told to aspire to be so busy and hustle that we have to go to Sweet Green and Chipotle every day because we can't afford, the time to sit down with our families and have a home-cooked meal? It's just, so backwards. But, that's the feminist narrative. And it's crazy because everything, what feminists don't realize is everything that they've fought for is about to come to an end. So there was a study done by Pew. So women age, I think 15 to 50, about 47% of them are not planning on having children, and it's unlikely they will have children. Comparably for men, it's about 40%. So a little less than half, but about half the population is choosing not to have children. And so they're going to grow. And there's some of this isn't by choice. There's, myriad reasons why you might not have a child. But there's a growing number of people who are deliberately choosing not to. And so this is going to affect the number of people who are produced, who are born, grow up, and become participants in the economy of the future. And as we're seeing in Japan and South Korea, if you don't hit replacement rate, so if you don't have enough children to replace the workers entering into retirement, it's kind of like an inverted pyramid. You're going to have way too many people at the top, depending on too few workers at the bottom. The sad part for feminists who are all fighting for this is that they're not even producing children, so they're not going to have anyone to carry on their ethos and their ideology. Like it's a very nihilistic ideology. It's like, go be a girl boss, don't have a family, and it's expecting to survive another generation or two. I don't know how that's possible. Like, if you don't produce children, you're not going to have a generation to like carry the flag forward to the next century. So all of this might be for naught, which is like the really depressing part. Why are women sacrificing their sacrificing their, I don't want to say happiness, but value on the altar of working a 9-to-5 job so that they can gain social value amongst their peers in society who have ascribed social value to equate to economic value and working? Why are women doing this? Possibly rejecting biological impulses to want to get married and have children. They're rejecting all of this for an ideology that probably won't exist in a couple generations. So, that's something to think about. But kind of like I was just saying, so fewer children born today means fewer adults to work tomorrow. Fewer adults in the future means fewer employees to support the economy, and fewer taxpayers to support the existing social welfare programs aging adults rely on. So again, the future is going to change. It's unclear if we'll continue to work. I mean, likely we're not, but how we're going to get paid, how we're going to subsist. So a lot of stuff is unknown. But I think the big thing is this kind of transition period we're in now. So I had ChatGPT plot out some of the different generations, and I want to draw your attention to the baby boomer line and the Gen X line, because I think that is important. Right now, there's about 67 million boomers and about 65 million Gen Xers. So combined, maybe like a third of the population. They're in retirement from 2011 to 2045. So 2030 is kind of, I think, a big year for a lot of us to pay attention to. I think that's when a lot of the white collar work is really going to be decimated around that time. You're probably going to see AI and automation, like self-driving vehicles, for example, really take off. So it's going to affect other areas of the economy as well. But it's also the period of time when some of our social safety nets are going to start experiencing fiscal crisis. So you've probably heard of this before. Social Security is expected to run dry. I remember in high school, my AP government politics teacher would talk about this. This is again like the mid 2000s. And I remember he would talk about this. And at the time, I think Social Security was pegged to run out by 2038. You can go back in time and look at this. But every year, they changed the number. So I think a year or two ago it was 2035, then it was 2034. Now it looks like it's 2033. And that doesn't mean payments will stop, but what it does mean is that payments will be reduced. So instead of receiving 100% of your benefit, you might only receive 70%. And obviously this is a problem because inflation and the cost of living continues to rise. So if if you only are expecting to get a $3,000 or $4,000 a month payment and that's cut, like, you don't have a lot of wiggle room to work with. And a lot of retirees, don't have savings, and they're I think half of folks don't even have retirement at this point. So we're heading into this fiscal cliff around 2030 when the AI technological revolution is really about to ramp up, and we're going to start experiencing strife because the people who are retiring or expect to retire are going to start drawing more and more from the system. Well, that's not going to leave a lot left for the rest of us who are getting older. So the way the system works is, millennials would rely on probably like Gen Beta, which is being born currently. Gen Xers will be relying on Gen Z. Well, if you have a smaller population and fewer people working, you're not going to have people paying into the system. So who's going to support these people when they retire? And then obviously the bigger question is, if you're a Gen Xer or a millennial who chose not to have children because you went the feminist route and pursued your career, what expectation should you have, and what does society owe you for that choice you made? Are they responsible for ensuring you can continue to afford food and a house despite not producing the next generation? Are you going to collect, taxes off of this generation that's currently, 10 years old, or those that are being born once they enter into the workforce? Are you going to collect your retirement from your state-sponsored retirement from them, even though you didn't do anything to produce them or raise them? And if so, how is that fair? Is that right? I think up until this point, we've accepted that to be the norm because everyone, one way or another, participated in the system. But because we have people who are opting out, and it's not just childless women, by the way. You could have this whole conversation as well about men who have gone their own way, living in their mama's basement, collecting disability, which a lot of them are doing, collecting food stamps instead of working. They're playing World of Warcraft or whatever, and they're collecting benefits because they're disabled, even though a lot of them they're not physically disabled. They're for one reason or another they just aren't working, and they've gotten someone to certify they're disabled. That's happening. You have people who are strung out on drugs and homeless. What I know, a lot of those people are on the streets by choice. You can go watch any person who has documented this or interviewed folks who are on the streets or working with folks on the streets. They're not homeless because they can't get housing. There's tons of support and resources. They're homeless because they want to be homeless. So what does society owe to those people? So there's all sorts of different people. I just want to pick on the childless cat ladies because I think for them it's a selfish choice. It's a narcissistic choice. It's a choice that supports them today in this moment, but it's not thinking about what the future holds. And I think that's part of the whole process of having a family and having children, is it gives you stake in the future. And so if you don't have stake and if you don't have equity in a future, you don't care. You're not going to be a steward of resources, and you're not going to have responsibilities today for the future because you have no stake in it. So that's why I think this whole conversation about what we prioritize and putting careers over families is really important, because it shows who has stake in the future and who doesn't. And then it obviously raises a question of, if you don't have stake in the future, what say do you have about it? And that's kind of what I say here, Are childless cat ladies, are they entitled to the fruits of the next generation's labor when they did nothing to contribute to it? I think that's a very valid question, something we need to start talking about. So to dive in, I think women are going to be the most affected by technological job disruptions. And because of that, they're going to become increasingly dependent on external support systems as a result. And so I highlight the retirement problem because I think that is a major structural problem in the economy. But I think we're going to start seeing the consequences of this much sooner, because you're going to have a disproportionate number of people beginning to rely on the social safety network, unemployment, Medicaid, food stamps. That's going to create a drain on the federal government. And obviously, because people are out of work and they're not paying taxes into Medicare and Social Security, it's going to affect those people as well. So it's kind of like sandwiching both sides of this. It's not just one generation or another. Like, we're all going to feel the effects of this inevitably. So one of the problems and one of the reasons why I think women are going to bear the brunt of technological job disruptions is because women tend to choose support roles, even in the white-collar workforce. They're not the ones who are on the front lines of developing AI, for example. They're not, the ones, to my knowledge, who are in developer teams and that kind of stuff. They're the ones who are doing the social media management or the marketing or their project management. And so to give you an idea, I wanted to pull up Coursera. I think Coursera is going to become a really important, or it's an example of something that could become a really important reskilling platform and credentialing system in a post-higher ed, post-college world where college degrees don't matter anymore. So I think it is worth paying attention to what tracks they have and careers and all this kind of stuff. So you can just look, here, and I don't know if they deliberately did this. All these guys are dudes, but look at some of the salaries. So, data analyst, less than 100K, but data scientist, 145K, content creator, 54K, project manager, 105K, user interface designer, 134K, okay, cybersecurity analyst, 112, Automation engineer, 127. Okay, that's decent. But then you get to like digital marketing specialist, 67. Business analyst, 98. Marketing analytics specialist, 120. Statistician, 97. So it's not like these are necessarily bad jobs. Human resources, 57, and these are being automated. Pay attention to what IBM is doing with their human resource department. They're outsourcing everything, not just to AI, but they're building AI agents that they're planning on selling to other people. Salesforce doing something very similar with their CRM system. So pay attention to that. But like you can see here, graphic designer, 58. So I'm not saying that all men make more than women, but a lot more men choose jobs that pay more than the jobs women choose. Women are choosing graphic design. A lot of women choose HR. Women choose, marketing, and some of these may pay well, but they don't always pay well. And so I think women choose easier careers that pay less, that are less demanding. And I don't think women are willing to work harder to put in the time to building higher value careers than women, because it takes a lot of hard work. I think observationally, I think a lot of guys who, whether they're in investment banking, trying to make partner at McKinsey, blue collar, getting overtime, working in a factory, it spans both blue collar and white collar. But you look at guys and they just work more. They put more time in. They work more. They work to build their careers more. Like women just complain. I joined a lean in circle in DC. Like that accomplished absolutely nothing for me. I spent my time complaining, learning about the feminist ideology, how it related to my career, like ingesting and going to like support groups basically with other women to complain about how we were all underpaid and we all need to lean in and demand what we were worth. I did absolutely nothing I'm not gonna say I did absolutely nothing, because I did, for me, language was my skill. So I did invest heavily into learning language, for example. So it's not that I didn't do anything to build up my career and build up skills. But I think men are more committed to that than the vast majority of women. I love this TikTok because I think this is a great example.
My coworkers keep saying I need to make like a tech TikTok, because if you look at my TikTok, you'd never guess I have a job. So anyways, this is our current workstation. Callie and I are what you call product managers. Callie, what is your team over?
My team is over reporting and internal tools.
And I am over what we call card experience. So we work on like anything from activating your credit card to freezing, reissue, shipping, all the good stuff. What's a PM?
We help prioritize and help the engineers stay on track and help them know what to build.
Okay, so basically she's just openly admitted she's a babysitter. She babysits whatever teams she product team she's on, and she makes sure they stay on track. Well, AI can do that now. Like there's enough like zaps and automations you can put into whatever tools you use to do that for you. You don't really need a product. Like you don't need to pay someone $150 or whatever $1,000 a year, benefits and all that kind of stuff, to nag you on Slack, because that's basically what they're doing. Like they clearly don't have, their work isn't very demanding. And I'll say this as a writer, like I couldn't do this. I go to coffee shops and I work, but I need to be in the right headspace. I listen to the classical music. I need to have the right environment for me to like sit down and work, and I need to have like at least 2 hours of undisrupted time to actually do deep, meaningful work. I can't just work for 5 minutes and then dive into the pool and do another 5 minutes. So the fact that they can sit at the pool and do this tells me they don't have enough work to do. The work they are doing is superficial, and then obviously the way that they're describing their work, it can be automated. So I think the vast majority of women are in careers like this. They're in bullshit jobs that are largely administrative, and they're coordinating, paper pushing, babysitting, and all of that stuff is about to be automated to AI. And so women want these jobs because they're less demanding and they're easier. And this is why it's so crazy to me that women are like, oh, there's a wage gap. No, there's a choice gap. Like you're choosing you're choosing low demand jobs. Men aren't taking like high paying jobs from you. You're just choosing the lower paying jobs. And so when AI takes over these jobs, it's going to take over a lot of white collar jobs. So I don't think, based on what I was saying before, I don't think women are going to invest in reskilling themselves. Again, the feminist mindset is to blame other people and not take responsibility for your actions. So these women aren't going to be proactive about learning how to use AI. They're not, if they have a choice between going to happy hour or brunch and staying home and learning AI, they're going to choose happy hour and brunch. Like that's just what women do. So there's going to be a skills gap. So the demand for them, obviously AI is going to take their jobs. What remains? There's going to be high competition for jobs where you have to manage AI. So AI technicians, AI auditors, AI prompt engineers, things like that. I don't know that women are investing the time and the effort into learning those skills. So there's going to be a skills gap. So they're not going to be competitive. Okay, so the jobs that remain, if you can't compete for the AI jobs, it's going to be largely blue collar and caretaking roles. Blue collar stuff for obvious reasons. Women are probably not going to volunteer to go lay down asphalt in the middle of the summer. Some might, but I suspect the vast majority won't. And the caretaking roles, because of what I was saying in the beginning about how the feminist narrative has prioritized the economic social value of women, not the biologic or nurturing social value of women, they're going to see those jobs as beneath them. So even if we need more elder care, for example, you have a large population of boomers and Gen Xers who are going into retirement and they're aging and they need support. But those jobs obviously don't pay well. Like go to any nursing home, they don't pay well. So those are going to be jobs that are going to be available, but they're not going to pay well, and they're going to be beneath. They're going to be socially beneath white collar, college educated women. So they're not going to want to take those jobs. So they're going to opt to rely on, whatever social safety net they can get their hands on. And you already see this. I made a separate video with some of the welfare queens who are on food stamps popping out tons of kids just so they can stay on their benefits. You already see this at, I would say, like the lower socioeconomic rung, and that is predominantly dominated by women. So it's not unreasonable to expect the same psychology to apply to other levels of socioeconomic ladder as well. Like wherever people can, they're going to choose the path of least resistance. So I think that's what's going to happen. So folks are going to be displaced. Many of the white collar jobs that women choose are going to be outsourced. And so the current assumption right now, again, is that workers will shift to different parts of the economy. There's no reason to expect that to actually happen. Like I don't know that someone who's an SEO manager or a marketer or a PR representative, like I don't know what job they're going to have in the AI world, right? And so they're going to have to rely on these government-funded programs to meet their day-to-day needs. And so, like I was saying, I think instead of seeking employment, women are going to take the easy route. So they're going to look for government services. Okay, so who pays for that? Who pays for that? Is the blue-collar guy working overtime to support his family? Are we going to keep taxing him more so that, the woman in LA who used to be an influencer, but now there's AI influencers, so she can't compete and has no real skills. Like, is she going to collect benefits off of his labor? This is a really important question. This gets back to our whole social contract and how we've structured society and what's fair. We're having this conversation right now as it relates to the wealthy, how the wealthy should pay more. But it's not just about the wealthy. There's a bigger question of, if you aren't contributing to society, what exactly does society owe you? And what should people be expected to give you? It's one thing if you have a kind heart and you're a philanthropist and within your local community you say, hey, folks have fallen on hard times, I have extra money, I'm going to donate to the food bank, I'm going to do this, right? That's one thing. It's a whole different thing to have the government come in, take 30% of everything you've earned, and then transfer it to someone else, which is effectively what happens. And so it reduces the incentive to work. It reduces like the incentive to participate in the economy. Like who, at some point you might get to like you might look at the tax brackets and be like, oh, okay, if I work overtime, I'm going to make too much and get taxed more. Maybe, maybe I'm going to hold back. Or, really savvy people who figure out the game, they build businesses and trusts and they shelter their assets there. And so this is what's happening. And I think this is why there's a wealth gap. It's because you have this disproportionate demand for unearned resources from people at the top who have built things and done things. And there's this expectation of equitable distribution. And the input to get that isn't equitable. So why should there be an equitable output if there isn't an equitable input? And so that gets into, Marxism and socialism, but I think feminism is kind of wrapped into that. So they're gonna demand equitable redistribution of wages that they did nothing to earn. So I think that's going to be the interim period. But in reality, women have been suppressed by their own choices. The patriarchy isn't real. If anything, the patriarchy wears Prada because the only people oppressing women are other women. And so they're choosing not to have children. So there's a question of who's responsible for taking care of them later in life. The assumption I'm making here is that, okay, the social safety net you're expecting to rely on, government programs, it's not going to be sufficient. You're going to have too many people drawing on a system that starting in 2030 and beyond is going to seriously fracture. You're not going to have enough workers on payroll contributing to it. And we currently at this point do not have an alternative system in place. So it's going to be very tumultuous in the next decade or two. And at the same time, you have women who aren't having children now, so they're not producing children for the future. They don't have stake, they don't have equity in the future. And so as we get through this transition period, these women are going to be on their own. They're going to be entering into retirement, expecting, maybe they'll have a 401k they'll live off of, it's definitely possible, but they're going to be expecting to receive their social security check, right? Because they paid into the system, and they're going to be expecting Medicare, and there's not going to be enough workers in the system to fund those programs moving forward. And so the assumption I'm making is an alternative to the government is family and is community. I think the Mormons and the Amish are two really good examples of communities that exist within this country that operate outside of the government and have an inherent welfare program that they manage to take care of their own people. And a lot of both those communities, the role of women is to have children. It's not explicit. It's not like the only thing they do. Like how many Amish people like run businesses, right? Like it's not like they're just sitting at home being baby factories, but the objective is to have children and produce the next generation. And so if feminists aren't doing that in our secular society and they expect to benefit from the fruits of the next generation's labor, what is realistic here? What is realistic here? And I highlighted this line because I think this is really good. Women balk at the idea of submitting to a husband or raising children. It's like an abomination to them. They don't want anything to do with it, but they would rather go and submit to a bank and a corporate employer, someone who doesn't care about them. They're just a number on a spreadsheet. Like these women would rather listen to feminist ideology, derive their social value from their economic value, and then have a company, a corporation, tell them what they're worth, give them a paycheck, but then at any point in time, they can just pull it back. And then they have nothing. You have nothing. Tomorrow, you could get a pink slip from your job and be left absolutely destitute and with nothing. And sure, there are risks in relationships as well. But hopefully, you've chosen well, and that's not going to be a concern for you. You're going to be working as a team to support each other. But if you're a childless cat lady and you're in your, mid-40s, 50s, on the cusp of maybe retiring, not yet to retire, you're going to lose your job from AI, you're going to get a pink slip. You've spent all this time submitting to, the ability to access credit from a bank or the ability to continue working your job from a corporate employer. You've been sponsored by these external institutions. You've submitted to them in the same way, you fear submitting to a husband, and they're just faceless, nameless organizations. Well, not nameless, they, brands and stuff, but they're to you, you're no one to them. and they don't care about you, and you would rather, like, that's your preference. And I think that's what's so insidious about this, and what irks people is you have men out there who are working really hard to support their families, and they're being taxed out the wazoo to also support people like this who are voluntarily choosing to submit to corporations, entities, things that aren't even adding value to society, things that are making life worse. Like, if you're a woman and you want to be a girl boss and you're going to work at private equity, I don't know that you're helping society. I'm gonna be honest. Like, I don't know how much you're helping society by doing that. So if you're a woman who's on social media, okay, you've hypersexualized it, and then you're you're selling an illusion, you're selling a made up fantasy life to people. Is there value in that? Is there honor and dignity into going to your Madison Avenue office to run a marketing campaign for who knows what, DraftKings, or some sort of sports betting program, or something that fosters an addiction? Like, is that good? Are you adding social value? Like, these are questions we need to ask. I think they're really important. Okay, another thing I call attention to here is that so women are doing all of this. They've chosen the feminist path, they've chosen the career path, but they've chosen to do so at a disadvantage because they've had to finance really expensive college degrees that are inherently worthless. And I don't know the stats on this off the top of my head. I think marketing and PR and like the social sciences are top careers for women. And again, there's nothing stopping women from going into STEM, going into finance, going into all these male-dominated majors. They are self-selecting. They are choosing not to, so they're becoming journalists. I studied history, PR, that kind of stuff. So they're self-selecting. So they're financing these expensive college degrees that are worthless, and they're about to lose their jobs because of it. And they have, and that's I bring that up because the costs of student debt and the costs associated with raising children are some of the drivers in the choice between not having children. So again, it gets to the point of you've prioritized a career, you've allocated resources to the career, you're not willing to pony up and pay the consequences for it. And I have sympathy, I do, and I've argued this. I was 17 when I signed my student loan promissory notes. Should a 17-year-old from a first-generation family be responsible for debt and not without the understanding of how that was going to impact me? I think there's a good debate there. I don't know that you should be giving 17, 18, 19-year-olds student loans when most of them are being underwritten by their parents, and their parents haven't passed on the knowledge they need to understand the consequences of debt and how compound interest works. But once you get to your 20s, you've maybe worked a little bit, you've decided to go back for a master's degree or a JD, and you haven't done your homework. At that point, I'm like, okay, less grace for you in that regard. If even the choice of degree, if you're choosing a gender studies degree and you have no concept of what you'll do after college, you have no idea of what job you will have, it's hard. It's hard for me to be sympathetic to that. So these women have chosen these really expensive degrees, and this is impacting women who are in their 20s and their 30s because now they've come to realize, oh my gosh, this costs way more than I realized, and now I can't afford to have children. And so I don't think women are getting the most out of their careers. I think it's kind of pointless to pursue a career because you took on debt to finance this career. You're earning less than men because you've self-selected jobs that don't pay as much. You're at risk of automation because your jobs are administrative bullshit in nature. You're babysitting. You're a glorified babysitter in an office. Women are already more dependent on programs like SNAP, like Medicare, like Social Security. And so there's a good reason to expect childless cat ladies to rely on these programs once they become unemployed. So I think there's good reason to believe women are going to start depending more and more on these programs in the years to come. And the reality is they're taking more than they're putting in. And then this gets even to the numbers, right? If you've self-selected for a job that pays $50,000 a year, and you have, again, some dude who's working like a $200,000 a year job. He's being taxed way more than you are. He's paying more into the system. Like, why do you get to draw from it? Why do you get to draw an equitable portion? The standard for getting stuff like food stamps is standard. It's standardized across different areas based on, your income level and the assumed cost of living. It's standardized. So why does someone is working more, works harder, gets access to the same benefits as you? And oh, by the way, most of the time these people don't, because they make too much. So even in a world where you lose your job and you become dependent on food stamps and whatever, you could have a father who is still working to support his family, making only $10-15 an hour, but according to the system, he makes too much. So even if he's struggling to get by, he still wouldn't qualify for the same benefits that an unemployed person who's not working and choosing not to work is going to get. So there's just a real perversion in how the welfare system is implemented. I'm not saying we shouldn't have social safety nets, but there's just a perversion in how it's being implemented and who's benefiting from it. And over time, I think, and especially in more conservative-leaning areas and more conservative groups, they're watching and they're seeing people who are not contributing, they're not doing anything to benefit society. And so they're looking, if you look at, again, I'll pick on influencers in New York and LA, why should someone in Omaha, Nebraska, why should someone growing corn and a farmer in Omaha, Nebraska support women in LA and New York who have an inflated lifestyle, an inflated ego, and have chosen jobs that are no longer sustainable? Like, who's responsible for the choices of these women? I think that's really what this gets at. And so the problem with feminism is that instead of seeing responsibility for what it is, it just passes blame. It passes blame. And so because there's no responsibility, women don't recognize that they've made choices, and those choices have consequences. So they're not accountable for those consequences. And that gets back to whether or not to have children. So if you've made the choice not to have children because you want to pursue your career, that's fine. But that's a choice, and you need to bear the responsibility and the consequences for those actions. It's clear that I think that most people don't have the means, most women especially don't have the means or desire to improve their financial situation on their own. And again, you see this in culture, you see this in the work ethic. Women would rather go to brunch than learn to code. How many women voluntarily learned to code over the past decade? Not as many as you'd think. They would rather, get married, or you see kind of these dating stuff on YouTube and TikTok, but these women who are gold diggers who really expect men to have like six figures and work in finance and all this kind of stuff. Like, there's clearly, they want someone else to take care of them. They want their parents. You see a lot of them who are still living at home. So they don't want the responsibilities of motherhood. They themselves are still infantile children. They want someone else to take care of them. They want no responsibility. They just want to live in the world freely to do whatever they please. And so they're looking for their parents, or a significant other. So that could be a boyfriend or a husband or whatever. A sugar daddy. You're seeing a lot of that on social media. Or women just pandering for TikTok. The amount of women who are broadcasting every minute detail of their lives on social media for the gratification of a few likes and the hope of earning a few bucks is just, it's insane to me. It's insane that you would commoditize your life in that way. And I know, obviously a lot of ballerina farm and folks like that do that, but I think it's part of a bigger marketing strategy for an actual business. Like, people don't realize, like, the Neelemans own a business. They have products. They produce products. They have a farm. They just opened a farm stand. Like, they're building stuff. They have an actual business. So them sharing their lives is kind of part of that, and it's no different than what the Kardashians did. So I don't know why we're glorifying the Kardashians and, the Neelemans are these evil people. It's two sides of the same coin there. So anyways, women are looking for people to underwrite their lives for them. They don't want to do the hard work. So, again, we're in this technological revolution. AI is here. It's a genie that's out of the bottle. It's not going back. It's going to catalyze further automation because the AI is the thing that goes into the self-driving vehicles, the humanoid robots, all that good stuff, right? And so for the rest of the technological revolution to manifest in terms of automation and replacing humans, you need AI. And so as that becomes more developed, it's going to replace more and more people. And then there's a whole separate scientific, like life sciences revolution happening, which I think, I need to learn more about myself, but what's happening there is insane. You have CRISPR gene editing. You can choose like specific elements of your baby. Like you can design babies now. And I think we're going to get to a point where artificial wombs will be existent. So if we're doing IVF already, we're creating life outside of the womb. Why not create an artificial womb to just pop out that life, So we're moving in that direction as well, where the very thing that makes women special and unique is about to be fundamentally challenged. And so these are deep spiritual and philosophical questions that are really going to disrupt society. And right now we're seeing a lot of political flashpoints around this because our government is going to have to change. We're not going to be able to continue existing the way we have been. So things are going to change. The social contract is going to change. How we exist with one another, relationships between different groups of people is going to change. And this is why the identity politics has become such a flashpoint, because when you talk about distribution of resources and equity, you have one group of people who says that they deserve resources based on how they identify and historical injustices. So for women, historically, kept out of the workforce, paid less than men, therefore they deserve more. And you have groups of people, I would say your more fundamental capitalists, free enterprise people, who are like, no, wait a minute, these people didn't put anything into the system. Like, I was listening to, I think a lecture about this, and someone made a really good point. Everyone complains about Jeff Bezos having so much money. Why does Jeff Bezos need all this money, right? Jeff Bezos created an easy button where you can pull up your phone, you can open the Amazon app, you can order whatever you want, and within an hour, in some cities, it will be at your door. You never have to go to Walmart again. You don't have to deal with people. If you need something, you can order it and it will get delivered to you. He's figured out, like him and his team at Amazon have figured out the whole system of getting a thing made, a widget made, getting it to America, storing it, and then transporting it to you in rapid time, okay? He's built a magical button that brings stuff to you. And people are like, he has too much money. He needs to be taxed more. I'm not saying he's good or bad. I'm just saying what he's created. He's created an easy button. Like, you haven't done that. So why do you deserve more of his success? Again, Elon Musk is another example. He's a super wealthy guy. People are like, oh my gosh, all the billionaires need to be taxed. Again, I'm not saying all the billionaires are good people. There are some really bad billionaires, right? But Elon Musk is doing more in terms of rocket science and space exploration than our government has done in decades, okay? And he's got tons of people building, everyone is like crapping on Tesla because of the work he did with Doge, but what you don't realize is he restored auto manufacturing to the United States. So in the 2008s, 2010s, whatever, during the financial crisis, you had GM and Ford and all these American companies pull back their operations in the US. They moved a bunch of factories to Mexico. People lost jobs. People lost good paying jobs, were reduced to poverty, lost their dignity. And Elon Musk has built factories, his gigafactories, here in the United States where he now employs people. So the auto industry is so important to the American economy and our identity that it had to be bailed out, right? Like, it is so significant, it had to be bailed out. And so you have a man, independent of that, who has a vision for the future, happens to be electric and renewable, right? So harvesting energy from the sun. You have a man who's figured this out. He's built new manufacturing facilities in the United States, has reshored, redomesticated jobs that were previously lost by his predecessors. And people are like, he's evil, he's awful. Like, he's employing so many people and doing really cool stuff. And I'm not saying he's good. I'm not saying he's bad, but objectively, he's creating jobs. And he's creating high value jobs. Like, how much do Tesla engineers make, And so it's hard. It's hard just to hear the argument like, oh, we just need to tax the rich more, because the people who are making those claims aren't contributing to society. You know, if you can afford to go protest in the middle of the day, a performative protest, like there was that video that went viral in New York of two protesters at a protest, and a black woman was asking them to move because she had to get to work, and the one guy on a bike was like, "Work? What's that?" Like clearly, like has no cognizance of the fact that people work. And the racial dynamic was really interesting there. And there was a white woman too that was part of that conversation. But the point is, like, there's this demand for redistribution of unearned contribution. Like, you're not contributing, you're not building companies that are employing people, you're not providing jobs, you're not working in companies or creating products that are adding social value. Honestly, if anything, a lot of these women are doing more harm. I mean, how many women are doing stuff at Facebook and Instagram? Like, we know, like the data's out there that Facebook and Instagram has targeted young, like teenagers, 13 to 17-year-old teenagers, has warped their worldview, is contributing to the mental health crisis amongst teenagers. How many women are going and they're just collecting paychecks? We're just doing our jobs. The same way that people are complaining about ICE right now. ICE guys, you're evil, you're awful because you're doing your job. But we're not having the same conversation about the social media marketing managers who are doing the exact same thing. They're playing psychological games with young people and with people across the country, but especially young people, contributing to mental health crises, the likes of which we have not seen before, and I think will only get worse. No one's holding them accountable to it. But that's good. We're saying that's good. That's valuable. So not, even though the jobs that women are doing, it's not valuable. And again, I'm not saying this is all women, but the feminist narrative, women who ascribe to the feminist narrative, women who are fighting for this, who are choosing these jobs, who are choosing not to have children, who are choosing not to become productive members of society, there's a big question about what we owe them. Like, what do the rest of us owe these women who are choosing this? And I think this is going to be really acute in the next few years, because we have to forge these new rules essentially for how we're going to govern ourselves, for how society is going to look, for what distribution looks like. We're going to have to do this, and I don't think it's going to be amicable. I think it's going to be very, very difficult. But whatever emerges, like, we're going to have to figure out how to implement it. And I don't know that we'll be able to, because there's so many different stakeholders with competing interests. And I think a flashpoint is going to be folks who have families, folks who have businesses, folks who have invested into reskilling, versus people who are just fighting on their identities. Well, I'm black, therefore I deserve this because historically my people were oppressed. I'm a woman, and historically women were oppressed, therefore I earn more. You're going to have these oppression politics people versus people who are actually doing things. And I think they're going to butt heads, because the people who aren't contributing are going to demand things from the people who are. And I don't know that they're going to want to voluntarily surrender what they're building and what they're contributing for much longer. This is something I think about with homeschooling and the rise of homeschooling. You know, how is that going to change the school system in a decade or two, when those who are having children are pulling their kids out at an unprecedented rate because they don't want their kids indoctrinated in what's being put out in the public school system. These people live in communities, pay property taxes. You know, at some point you're going to have budget deficits, and so our school board meeting is going to, what are those going to look like in the coming years? For how much longer are homeowners and homeschoolers and folks paying into a system that they're not benefiting from? How much longer are they going to tolerate that? And tolerate their taxes going to the administrative costs of school and the education system and the indoctrination of school. If you have a school system, if you have public tax dollars going to a public school system that is minting out ideologues, and these kids don't work, they have mental health crises up the wazoo, every day of the week they're a different gender, they don't know what they are, that's not beneficial to society, right? So for how much longer are people going to tolerate these things? And I think that's a question we need to ask. So I published this on Tomorrow Today on Substack. If you want to read more, feel free to do so. But I do think this is an important conversation to have. Yeah, I'm focusing on childless cat ladies here, but this applies to other segments of the population as well. We are entering into a period of mass disruption. We need to start asking these questions and thinking about these things, because it's only going to get worse from here. The more the want mores complain and demand and request redistribution of resources from the people who have more, and I'm not saying the wealthy, just people who have more than the people who want more, it's not going to end well. It's not going to be amicable, and I don't know that our political institutions will be able to resolve things like they've historically been able to, and so it's going to lead to conflict. And yeah, where do we go, and who we have to think of the bigger picture here. Okay, this is going to happen in the short term. We're going to have a lot of conflict and discourse about how resources are distributed over the next decade, how, especially with job losses. Okay, but what about 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 40 years from now, when the consequences of not having children are really starting to manifest in society, and we have reached our peak, and we can no longer, the workforce of the future can no longer support the people who are aging into retirement and the people who don't have families to take care of them. I think, we have to look at the bigger picture too. Not just, what's standing in front of us today. So if you like this video, please like it and subscribe. That would help me as I grow this channel. Feel free to go read this on Tomorrow Today. And let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. And I'll see you in the next video. Have a good one.